Hi, I'm Sebastian. Let's talk about the story of my life. In the book The Story of My Life by Jay McInerney, Allison Poole is an actress who's looking for work and she's in school learning to be an actress. One of her problems is that she doesn't have good communication with her father. So her father is this really rich man who vacations a lot and travels to exotic places, and every time she tries to reach him, she can't. She either gets a secretary or no one at all. So this causes problems when she's looking for rent money. She calls him and asks him for her monthly allowance, but of course he doesn't pick up, and this also causes problems for her tuition for school. So some of the days she can't go to school because she doesn't have the money to pay for it, and other days she can't pay for her rent because their parents won't give them money. So early in the novel, she meets a man, Dean, and she starts to really lust after Dean. She begins to have an actual true relationship, which she doesn't seem to recognize, and she's never had that before. She's had a lot of empty, loveless sex in her life, as a lot of her and her friends do. So when she meets Dean, she's kind of caught off guard and doesn't want to feel these feelings, but she allows herself to finally feel them, and she develops more with Dean, and they become a couple. So one of Allison's friends, Dee Dee, is probably the craziest of her friends. She's always on cocaine and always telling everyone, all of her friends, that they should do cocaine, and she's more of an instigator for that crazy lifestyle that they all live, and Allison's definitely not one of the instigators. So another theme is honesty in this book. They play games of truth or dare at Allison's boyfriend Dean's apartment. So all of her friends come over and they play these really truthful games where they all have to be 100% honest. So this causes certain things to arise when one of her friends asks Dean who he thinks is more attractive, Allison or Dee Dee, one of her friends, and Dean lies and says Allison, and this kind of makes Allison mad as opposed to happy because she wants everyone to be really truthful and just live their life and say what they want to say. And so when Dean isn't fully honest, she gets kind of mad at him, and that pisses her off a little bit. But this is also hypocritical of Allison because she lies to a man named Skip that she needed money for an abortion when in reality she just needed the money for her rent. So as we get more through the book, her and Dean's relationship starts to fizzle out as they both have sex with other people and they don't tell each other about it. This causes problems. Other things, Dee Dee is put into a drug program, and Dee Dee becomes sober, and then she gets mad at her friends for doing drugs such as cocaine around her, which is another hypocritical moment from the book. Someone who is always encouraging the cocaine use to now saying, "Why are you doing that around me?" Other situations and problems arise with Allison's friends, stuff with their love life, but Allison seems to move through it. One bigger problem they have is paying for their rent at the end of the book because all of their fathers have cut them off for money and they won't send them anymore, so they're really used to receiving a lot of money from their childhood, and finally that's being dwindled and dwindled down until their fathers are hardly giving them anything, and they have a lot of trouble paying for this rent because none of them are willing to work, so it really causes issues to arise. And then at the end of the novel, she's sort of stopped her relationship completely with Dean, and she checks herself into a drug and rehab program in Minnesota to try to, I guess, gain something more than her empty life, even though she definitely didn't have the strongest cocaine problem of all her friends. And that's how the novel ends.
Hello, now we're going to talk about the main characters. The character I'll be talking about today is Allison. Allison Poole is our main character in the novel. Allison is a budding actress who currently lives in New York with a couple of friends that she shares an apartment with. Throughout the novel, she has trouble paying her rent, so that causes quite a few problems throughout her life. She also has a distant dad that she never seems to be able to get a hold of. That also causes some internal problems within her and her character. Allison, from her portrayal in the book, is you can get the sense that she's a very second. By that is that she has multiple different sexual encounters, whether it's through men that she doesn't know or relationships with people such as Skip Pendleton or Dean. But throughout the novel, it's just this reoccurring motif, her sexual encounters. So she has two main relationships throughout the novel, and the initial one is with Skip Pendleton. So he basically had a relationship with Allison prior to the novel, but all that his importance plays in the novel is that he basically gives Allison money to Allison, thinking that it's for an abortion, when in actuality it's for Allison to pay her rent. So the other relationship she has is with a man named Dean, and this is actually the most real relationship we see throughout the novel. She actually loves Dean. She falls head over heels for him. And basically, what the key thing about the relationship is that she wants him to be brutally honest with him. So we see this in their games of Truth or Dare that they play with her friends at Dean's house. So the catch of the game is that you have to be completely and 100% honest about everything that you say, and she likes that. But some problems come from this brutal honesty, such in the fact that when somebody asks Dean whether she finds a girl more attractive than Allison, and he says yes, this hurts her feelings. But at the same time, she likes this honesty, and that's something that she really values. She values that integrity and honesty, and that's something that she holds true to her heart.
Okay, and now we're going to talk about another character named Dee Dee Spence. And well, she's a good friend of Allison's and actually has a major drug problem in the novel, especially with cocaine. And well, this is actually a big problem because she has a lot of money from a Pepsi commercial that we learned later in the novel, and she gets all these residual checks month after month and uses all of that. Instead of on rent, she uses it for her cocaine. Okay, so stemming from the cocaine addiction, Allison actually consults Dee Dee's family and tells her that she has a major problem with cocaine. And from this, her family consults Dee Dee and then tells her to go to a rehab, and which ultimately changes her life for the greater good. And this last piece of hypocrisy is really the last part we see of Dee Dee in the novel.
Hey, the next character I'm going to talk about is Dean, a 31-year-old stockbroker from New York who meets Allison in the very beginning of the novel and develops a really, really nice relationship with her. He's a really honest guy. Dean is really into writing, especially Shakespeare. He wants to retire at the young age of 45 and eventually become a writer one day. Although Dean is a genuine, nice, well-rounded guy, he does engage in other affairs with other women and just does not tell Allison at all. Allison and Dean's relationship, although, does happen to have much hypocrisy in it because both of them engage in other relationships and do not tell each other about them. Although they like to be brutally honest, they are not frank with each other, and they like to engage in many other relationships all around New York City. But their relationship stays healthy around until the end of the novel, until they go different directions and, separate a little bit. Later in Allison and Dean's relationship, the reader gets to see that he actually was not indulging in a long-term relationship, and he just really wanted to have someone to spend time with after previously broken up with
The next character we'll talk about is Allison's dad, and he's not a huge role in the novel, but he does play an important part in her life because at the beginning of her life, he gave her a lot of money to pay for school and to pay for rent and to live on her own because he wasn't around much because he's been married 5 times and now he's living off somewhere where we don't know. The book doesn't tell us. And as the novel progresses, he stops giving her money and she keeps trying to contact him, and then when she does eventually contact him, he says he'll send the money, but she doesn't find that she doesn't get any money from him. Going back to his marriages, it kind of reflects upon Allison's life and her relationships because at one point in the novel she says she slept with 36 guys, and that was at the beginning of the novel, and it reflects about like how she's not really willing to stick around for them and love and care for them, and that's from her father's.
Hey, so basically now what we're going to talk about is this novel Story of My Life from a stylistic standpoint. So basically there are 2 main components that the author Jay McInerney utilizes throughout the novel. The first one being first-person narration. So basically what this allows us to do is gives us a more introspective look into the main character Allison Poole's life and allows us to psychoanalyze all of her decisions. The second main component would be this almost staccato-like sentence structure. It almost represents almost like a stream of consciousness. So it basically almost feels like we're inside of her mind. It's almost similar to the style or feeling that we got from reading Bright Lights, Big City.
And now I'll talk about another literary element of historical content. In the book, this is a quintessential 1980s piece of literature, and it's a lot about cocaine and drugs and how they use all their money to buy drugs and not pay rent, and all the characters mainly rely on their fathers for their money, and when they get their money, they don't spend it on stuff they need like rent and food. They spend it on cocaine and drugs, and it kind of relates back to Lesson Zero, about how drugs like controlled their life and it like also ruined them.
A symbol and motif that we're going to talk about today is rent. Rent is the harsh reality that looms over them that they seem not be able to pay the entire novel. Many of the characters struggle with rent, including Allison, who does not like to work and evidently cannot pay her rent. Dee Dee, who has a Pepsi commercial under her belt, has residual checks that she can pay off the rent with for only a lump sum amount of payments before she needs to get work as well. A motif that I'm going to talk about today is hypocrisy. Many of the characters go through many hypocritical moments when they strive to be honest but end up being hypocritical when they go through affairs and do not end up telling their significant other about those affairs. For example, Allison and Dean go through much of this hypocrisy when Dean engages in multiple affairs with other women and decides not to tell Allison about any of these, and likewise with Allison. Hypocrisy is evident in the book from the start and carries throughout the end of the novel, while multiple characters strive to be as honest as they can.
I'm going to talk about another literary element, historical content. This is a quintessential 1980s piece of literature in the sense that it relates to the 1980s era and the themes of drug use, free love, and sexual pleasure. And from an intertextuality standpoint, this relates to the other books we've read in class, such as Lesson Zero, where Clay has like no meaning of life, and after he comes back from college, he sees what all of his friends have become with all the drug use, and that relates back to this book.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the psychological approach through the eyes of Allison in the novel. And she's actually a full-heart believer in telling the truth and being fully honest with everything she says. And she actually contradicts everything she says throughout the novel. And referencing to page 79, she actually says that she's grown up with a lot of liars and cheaters throughout her life, and there's no exception for not telling the truth. So basically, throughout the novel, she contradicts everything she says.